You're listening to Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Two fans, two generations, all things Star Wars begins now.
All right, well, hello, everybody. I'm Eric Vansel.
I'm Daryl Sanders.
Oh, there's going to be one of those. It's going to be a huge delay tonight. All right, well, just understand that Daryl is going to be on a little bit of a delay, so we'll just have to be patient with when we ask the questions. But tonight, we're actually going to be talking about the new Star Wars film. So there's going to be, obviously, if you guys haven't been watching our show, or maybe you haven't kept up with things, there's going to be a new Star Wars movie coming out by James Mangold called Dawn of the Jedi. And what we're going to be dealing with tonight is apparently, again, from our good friends, which I wish we knew them, but at screenrant.com, the interesting thing about it is that apparently this is going to be the first time that we're going to see these really scary powers from the dark side. And so we thought this would be a good time to explore not only that, but also let's explore maybe what we would like to see from this movie, because I personally think, and I'm sure Daryl would agree, that there's a lot riding on this movie. So with that, Ronaldo, of course, is joining us. And we'd also like to once again welcome anybody that's watching us on Twitch, because it's been a minute, but we are now back on Twitch as well as YouTube. We have a Discord. You guys can check that out in the links. And, you can get notified there about everything, and it's a really big hub. So you're going to want to check that out. So Ronaldo says, "What's up, Ithorian spice dealers?" You got to love that one, right?
Right. He loves putting us into different
He does. Well, usually,
categories.
yes, but usually it's like,
More familiar ones.
Yeah, that one you got to give it to him. That is actually a really nice reference. So, Ronaldo, we love you, man. Thank you. All right, so with this whole Dawn of the Jedi thing and these dark side powers, I'm assuming you read the article as well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what did you make of all this?
Man, I'm really excited for it. It's something I've been wanting for a long time. I've talked at length at times about wanting to see like the beginnings, the origins of the whole Jedi order and the Sith for that. And this is what we're basically going to get in this Ten Commandments style epic of Star Wars, directed by James Mangold. And I think this is just a phenomenal idea. This is a perfect way of getting beyond the Skywalker saga, the Skywalker, I don't want to say franchise, but era. And then we have such rich foundation, rich soil that we can really plant a lot of things and get a lot of understanding. And one of the biggest things, and this is why I thought it was so interesting, because for those who don't know, I mean, I love the Jedi and the Sith, but the Sith kind of do have a special place in my heart just because they're kind of cool.
Of
I
course.
mean, but the interesting thing about this whole epic is that not only are we going to see the origin of the Jedi as far as the people who, or the ones who first kind of discovered the Force and its power, but we're also going to see how the Sith came about, because per canon, a lot of the Sith originated because they were once Jedi who fell to the dark side.
Yes.
Now, what makes this even more compelling, and if you really put yourselves into the mindset and the world of this concept, essentially these guys are coming to this power and they realize, oh, okay, hey, I can do cool stuff like and where's a little Leia from the Obi-Wan series, I can make people float, or I can, see kind of into the future, or I can, pull this cup to my hand. I don't have to go walk across the room to go grab it. Things like that. But the caveat about that is that of all the good, cool things you can do, they're unaware of the darkness that actually can happen. And so that's what's really interesting interesting is because you don't know you got this mysterious new power and force, literally, that's out there, but you're not even aware that there's a whole dark side to that. So these Jedi, quote unquote, are coming into this power and they are completely defenseless of the fact that the dark side can just tempt you because there's no way to safeguard yourself because you don't even know that it even exists. So that's what makes the dark side so dangerous in this particular situation, as we learn from Snoke, when light rises, dark rises to meet it, or vice versa. So that's what makes this story really, really rich to me because I mean this can go so many different ways, and especially since we're talking about the very origins and the beginning of this, you have a litany of years because this is before even the old republic, if you really think about this.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
before even Knights of the Old Republic, which takes place 10,000 years before the events of Phantom Menace and everything like that, this happens even before that. So you're not dealing with Yoda, you're not dealing with anime. You have a fresh, clean slate of people that you can use and stories that you can tell that even leads up. You have 10, well, depending on the time frame, you have a lot of years before you even get to the Old Republic. So I'm just really hoping that they, do right by this as far as the powers that be. James Mangold, I mean, he's a great director. He's given us some great films like Logan, which is an excellent, excellent movie. Really more gripping and emotional than I thought it was going to be when I first saw it. I mean, but Logan
Yeah,
was really
absolutely.
good. He's done Girl Interrupted. He's done, so many different other major films over the years. He's recently did the Indiana Jones movie. Um, he had a part in that. So I think that they got a really good person to kind of spearhead it, and especially if it's I don't know if it's one of those situations where he's writing and directing. We've talked about that on one of our other shows recently. But if he's writing and directing it, I'm really curious to see how he's going to make all this happen.
Well, and again, I mean, there's a lot that you can bring up when you talk about this because on one hand, first of all, yes, making just a Ten Commandments, Spartacus, Ben Hur type of
Hmm.
epic movie is really something that probably should have been done in Star Wars by now, at least with the standalone films. Because, like you said, this particular genre and this, I guess, application of this particular genre just screams epic type of a movie,
Hmm.
right? Where you basically have, like 2,000 extras or something. I mean, just some crazy thing. Now, again, with Star Wars, it's always been kind of a more personal story. I mean, even though you're telling you had this wider story arc in the entire galaxy, but they personalize it by having it through the lens initially of the droids R2D2 and C3PO, but then of course you're talking about the Skywalkers. Essentially the saga. That's why it's called the Skywalker saga, right? Because
Hmm.
that's who it's about. Now, the other thing that was of particular interest that you said that honestly I didn't even really think about. But you're right, because here's these guys who discover this power and they're enamored with what they could do with it and everything. But you're right. I mean, and it's going to be interesting to see where Mangold goes with this because you don't necessarily have all the identifying markers that the later Jedi had, where they actually know, oh, this is light, this is dark, this is good, this
Hmm.
is bad. I mean, it's kind of like it's really
Yeah.
more about the discovery of the power, you know?
Yeah, and really just how do you wield it, and it shows you how a a thought or an action could completely turn your life on its head. We talk and that's kind of very indicative to life. It's like, okay, even though you may do something for a friend, let's say it's something criminal, but you're really doing it to help a friend out.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it can land you in a deeper situation than what you intended to. and
Right.
now your life kind of starts to spiral out of control,
Yeah,
and it
and you're
leads you
basically
down
saying
to
like, why did I even do this, right? Or if I had had all the variables, if I knew all that, because right, I mean, and I think we brought this up jokingly a couple of shows ago, where if that friend comes and is basically saying, "Hey, man, could you help me out?" And of course, you're like, "Yeah, all right. What do you need?" And then you find out, there's a dead body in the trunk, and you need. I mean, it's just one of those things that maybe if they had been more upfront with you, you would have. I mean, you probably still would have helped them, but you would have made sure that you were protected in the process. And I think that that's something that's
right.
present here because obviously this dangerous, the dark side is most dangerous. I mean, just kind of a spoiler. Let's just get this out of the way right now. The reason why this article goes on to talk about this is because it's unknown. And this is what we've been talking about is that when these people were discovering this power, when the Force was pretty much a new thing, right? And
Hmm.
the Jedi were starting to come in. Basically, they didn't really understand the duality of the Force. They didn't understand that there
Absolutely.
was a light side and dark side. They're just looking at it as this one big package. And
Hmm.
because it's unknown, it can grip them. And it does make me wonder if they're going to do something along the lines, like you said, where a lot of the Jedi that we're even familiar with were initially Jedi Knights or Masters and then turned to the dark side and became Sith Lords. Count Dooku comes to mind right away. But
Right.
given that, it's almost like we know the origin of the Sith, and I kind of wonder if they're going to do an origin of the Sith story either as a second film or if they're going to incorporate it into this one because it's a very different thing. At least if they stick with what has been uh some of it's been canon, other stuff has been more it's been passed down in legends and it's almost like unless something contradicts it, this is what everybody's going to think, right? Where the Sith went to the Sith planet because there was actually people called the Sith. I mean,
Hmm.
the Sith was actually a
Right.
race, right? And then
Yeah.
the Sith Lords, as we know them, conquered these people, adopted their identity essentially, and came up with their whole creed and everything in the Force that's a little bit counter to the Jedi. So you had this dichotomy between the Sith and the Jedi, even though throughout all of Star Wars history, there's all these dark side users, and
Hmm.
to varying degrees. So it makes me wonder if they're going to maybe show the origin of the Jedi in this thing, but then show how some of them moved off and either became Sith Lords or perhaps they were what we would call dark Jedi, because that was a thing too.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. When you're talking about the dark side, there's so many components because one, you just have to even figure out like, well, because you have to, and like I said, I try to put myself in the mind, the space, or the shoes of some of these characters and situations, and it's like,
Yeah,
okay, you come across this great power, and it's like, oh man, like okay, we can do this, we can do, I can force push, I can, but then okay, I can get angry, but I can't allow my anger. Like, how much of my anger am I allowed to use before it becomes dark? You know what I mean? Like, where's the boundary?
right.
And this is where I feel like what's going to happen is you have to try to figure out, like, okay, we all know, like, oh, fear leads to hate, hate leads to anger, anger leads to suffering. It's like, okay, yeah, we can say that now, but like you said earlier, because Yoda kind of and people before him kind of figured that out, but
Right. What happens before they figure that
on the
out?
yeah, but on the
And how
initial
do they
front of it
figure that
all,
out? Right, exactly. I
yeah,
mean, because,
exactly.
well, there's the whole thing too where you bring up anger as a specific thing, right? Because you have a
Mhm,
situation where how much anger before it becomes dark. And the other
mhm,
side to that is if they have no knowledge of the dark side versus light and all this, and they're just looking at this as like this complete power, like, okay, I'm a good guy, I'm a
mhm,
nice guy, I have noble intentions, and I have now acquired this power. So I want to use it for good. Okay. I'm starting to get a little bit angry at this situation, right? That's some sort of
Mm-hmm.
opposition, let's say, a villain, right? Villain comes
Mm-hmm.
up. Okay, now I'm getting angry. Well, now I'm finding, thanks to the dark side, which of course I know nothing about because I'm just seeing this as one power. Okay, well, now I feel myself getting more powerful, which in my mind, I'm using for good, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, all right, to me now, this is a good thing. Hey, this anger that I'm feeling is actually making me more powerful and giving me more offensive capabilities within the Force. So, it's kind of like you wouldn't necessarily distinguish because by the time it gets to Yoda's time, people like Yoda and all those guys, they understand like, well, wait a minute, when you take
Mm-hmm.
this to this natural conclusion, it's a very
Yeah.
destructive, bad, you know, just something that just decimates everything around it and including the person themselves because again, the dark side of the Force, one of the downsides of it is the fact that it ultimately consumes the person that's using it and it basically destroys them over time.
Yeah. Well, the thing about I've noticed about the dark side of the Force, and this is, it's just it sucks because it's kind of it's such a trap because like once again like I think about if I were a Jedi and or someone who's studying to be a Jedi and at the very onset of all this, right?
Mhm.
The thing about the dark side of the Force is that it uses natural human feelings that everyone has. And you have to figure out a way to control that. And sometimes you really can't. So, like,
Mhm.
let's just take the first two, like fear. We've all been afraid of something at some point, whether it's something, like, oh man, I got a loved one that's sick. Or, I hope they don't die. I hope my mom doesn't pass from this. She just found out she had cancer. I hope she doesn't pass from this. Or somebody scared me really bad, or something. So now I have a fear of, spiders or whatever. Just fear is a natural part of life.
Heck yeah,
Anger.
dude. I was up till like 3 in the morning last night because some weird bug was flying around. And keep in mind, I never caught him. It was just I had to be up at 5 this morning and it's like 3. And I'm like, okay, I have to go to bed. Right. But
Right.
I didn't want to go to bed right away because I was afraid of what this bug might do to me while I was asleep. And I wanted
Hmm.
it dead, quite frankly,
Our
so
very
I could
dark
go to
side of
sleep
you.
at night. Right, exactly. So yes, fear is definitely a very real thing and it's a motivator. But here's the thing, and this is where I think you're going with this, and this is what I think is so brilliant about this, is the fact
Hmm.
that a lot of these emotions that we had were designed to promote goodness, right? I mean, fear is a thing that keeps us from danger initially. I mean,
Yeah.
if it's being used in the right way, fear can keep us from danger, but then it can become a hindrance.
Yeah. It
Anger,
can become crippling.
right?
Absolutely.
There's a righteous anger, and outrage at injustice and things like that pretty much motivates us to do the right thing. But then anger can also become destructive, both to ourselves
Yeah.
and those around us. So it's
Hmm.
that balance, if you will,
Hmm.
that is, like you said, if you're a Jedi and you find this new power and you're not really sure where the boundaries are, like when does, because again, like I said, the
Yep.
anger, the fear, all these are motivators that actually make you more powerful in the Force. Well, at what point does it have the law of diminishing returns to where it begins to destroy you and consume you versus empower you?
Exactly. And I couldn't have said it more perfectly. And the thing is that's that's the thing is because as you get more powerful, you're like, oh, okay. Who doesn't want to feel more powerful?
Right. And that's the drug, and
And
that's the
that's
lure of
the
the dark
drug.
side.
That's the lure of it. It's
Well,
because it's
because
like,
it's also
oh,
very quick, right? Because one of the things
hmm,
about the dark side that makes it so appealing is you get very powerful very quickly.
Yep.
And so, and a lot of these guys start out now. Palpatine obviously is an exception, but a lot of these guys, like Anakin's a good example, where they
Hmm.
have noble reasons for wanting to pursue this. I mean, it's like, look, I want to help
Absolutely.
people. I want to, stop people from. I mean, misguided but noble. And essentially, what happens is you get into a situation to where when does it stop being helpful and start to consume you? Because, like I said, yeah, the the lure of the dark side is the fact that you get very powerful very quickly, and it's like a
Yeah.
drug at that point. You know?
Yeah. I liken it to steroids. It's like, okay, you take a shot of,
Yes. Oh, what a
steroids,
great. Yes, absolutely.
and you start hitting the gym all of a sudden. And it's just like, okay, yeah, it's like, okay, yeah, you could took that's the easy path.
The
But
easy path. Yes.
the path that you should take is like, no, eat the right foods, meal prep. You got to go to the gym multiple times a day. You have to get enough sleep. You got to do, I mean, there's a lot if you really want to get into shape to look the way that you want to look. And there's a lot that goes into that. But then, in this day and age, everybody wants to run to Miami and go under the knife, or everybody wants to, stick a needle in their arm and pump themselves with a bunch of God knows what to make yourself look or feel the way that you want.
Mm-hmm.
But what should you be doing? You should be just taking, and that's another part. That's another thing. That's another human emotion. Patience. Everybody doesn't have, or everybody has patience, but everybody has it to varying degrees. Some people are very patient and they can take their time and it's okay. And then some people are just like, okay, if it doesn't happen like then, I gotta, you know, I gotta react. And I mean, I'm sure this is reading way more into it because
Well,
I
I
know
mean, maybe,
I
but that's what we do, right? I mean, this is the
well,
thing,
what I'm
and
about to say is reading way more into it because I know this. Like, okay, guys, they weren't thinking about all this when they created Star Wars. I know this, but I'm just saying, like, in that event, though, like, what if you have anxiety? Like, you're just naturally born with anxiety, but you also have the Force. Like,
yeah. Well, I mean, that might be something they explore. But here's the thing, because I want to follow through this like steroid example, because
mhm,
a lot of times we look at things like an either or, right? Like you either take the steroids and take the easy path and become very strong very quickly, or you do the slow thing to where you work out, you eat right, you do all the things that build it slowly. And that is a perfect,
mhm.
I guess, like example, right, of the light side versus the dark side, because it very much personifies both of those things. But here's something that I think a lot of people think. It's almost like a gray area. It's almost like that gray Jedi thing. What if you do both, right? What if a lot of times people go, I'm going to eat right, I'm going to work out, I'm going to do all this stuff. But what the steroids will do is they will amplify those results and
Mhm.
make it a little, so it's not like an either or, you know what I mean? It's more like I'm going to
And
do the
two.
right things, but I'm going to use this to amplify those things. Not just make it to where it happens quicker, but maybe I get even stronger through that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, well, see, and the same thing goes in with the steroid thing. Okay, so yes, you do eventually get stronger. You take the steroids, you go to the gym, but then it eventually does consume you because now you have roid
Exactly.
rage. You start having physical,
Well, you got like
um,
shriveled testicles or some stupid thing like
yeah,
that. I mean, you just, like, I
you
mean,
got
when
that.
you really
You got
stop and,
acne. You got
yeah,
heart
right.
issues. You got a bunch.
Yes.
So although you look fine, you look good on the outside.
You're rotting on the inside.
Internally, you're
Yeah.
rotting on the inside, and there's a lot of things medically that are tearing your body apart
Mhm.
while you're trying to come up with this look. And it's the same thing when a lot of people, when they go get like, some cosmetic surgery, it's like, okay, you're trying to look good on the outside, but on the inside, it's you kind of sometimes you're pumping your body full of poison. And
Well,
so
yeah, I
that's
mean,
kind of what
that's another
happens
good
with the dark
example
side.
too. Yeah, because I mean, look at all these people. Like you could tell these older people that get cosmetic surgery because it looks like their face is melting.
Hmm.
And you look at it and you're like, I mean, This is
Why'd
funny.
you do this to yourself?
Well, there was a thing that somebody put out not too long ago. It was maybe a couple of months ago I read this. And what they did, and this was brilliant. I thought that this is good, and I honestly think that they should start showing this to younger people, honestly, because what they did was they showed like they took Michael Jackson, they took all these people, right? And they said they put it through AI, and they said this is what the person would have looked like if they had never touched themselves and they were like 60 years old or something. If they had never done plastic surgery or anything, this is what they would look like. And then this is what they actually look like because of all the plastic surgery. And it's like, you know what? 9 times out of 10, the natural aging thing looks so much better than the plastic
Hmm.
surgery did.
Oh
And
yeah.
that's another good analogy. Now let me get to some of these chats here because as you can imagine, Ronaldo, whenever Ronaldo's on, Ronaldo likes to chat. So let's get to some of these things real quick here. He says, I barely remember the Dawn of the Jedi comics. Remember those? Yes, I do. Um, and I'm not entirely sure. And here's the thing that's really strange, right? Because you'll hear things like in the Ahsoka series, they'll start yammering on and on about, Thrawn, the heir to the Empire, right? So you start to get in your mind, are they doing an homage, or are they
Hmm.
actually planting the seeds to eventually make some sort of an adaptation of Heir to the Empire? And we don't know. But
Hmm.
I'm not entirely sure that this Dawn of the Jedi movie that's coming out really has anything to do with the comic series. Because, like you, Ronaldo, I do remember that. I do remember the Dawn of the Jedi series, and it was kind of along the same lines. But again, canonically speaking, I think what's happening is that Disney and Lucasfilm are kind of doing their own thing. Now, they might be borrowing titles, but I don't think that it's going to have anything in common. Um, Ronaldo, dude, you're gonna have to explain this one to me, man. I hope the ricotta appear. Now it's spelled differently, but the only ricotta I remember is cheese. So, with this particular spelling, just in full disclosure, even though, yes, as Star Wars guys with a YouTube channel and a Twitch channel, look, I'm not going to be the guy that's going to pretend like I remember every little thing here. Okay, so yeah, I can say that. Maybe I would hope that they would appear, but you're gonna have to chat in and tell me who they are first. Uh, and then,
Well, let's see. This says the Infinite Empire, known as the Empire. Well, it's an
oh, did you
interstellar
look? Wait,
empire in
did
the
you look it
galaxy.
up?
Yep.
Oh, look at you go. All right, Ronaldo. Maybe you don't have to look it up. Daryl's way ahead of us.
Advanced species that uses their knowledge to endlessly actually um actors were paving way for the formation of the Galactic Republic within several short centuries.
Okay.
Um, the Infinite Empire was led by Overpraetor from Lahan in the unknown regions. Okay, the unknown regions.
All right.
Um,
Well, I
but
guess I
let's
can.
see.
I can say. I guess I hope they appear too. Right. But you know what? I'm
Wow,
just gonna say
this is
right
kind of
now.
creepy, though. Honestly, though.
What?
Well, they said the Qua is a force sensitive reptilian species from the planet of Dathomir, arrived on Lahan and the homeworld of the Rakata species via the Infinity Gate technology. The Kwa traveled instantaneously across the galaxy as they had done to many worlds before. Um, and the Quad became the Rakata's benefactors, teaching them about the Force and giving them advanced technology. However, the Quad were horrified to realize that the Rakata were a cannibalistic race that ignored the Quad teaching of balance, drawing only on the dark side of the Force, pairing their aggression and their desire to conquest for their conquest with the Quad's technology. Hmm.
Okay, I kind of hope they
They sound
appear.
they yeah, they sound
You
they
know,
sound
with
kind of
that,
vicious.
yeah, they do. They sound kind of vicious. He goes on to say, "Do you think James Mangold actually likes or even knows about the comics? I think not." It's funny because, like, my first instinct would of course be to say no, right? I mean, that's instantly you want to say no. But look, J.J. Abrams, it turns out, was kind of an expanded universe aficionado, along with was it Kasdan's son? Was it Jason Kasdan or whatever? It's like Lawrence
Well,
Kasdan's kid that ended up like co-writing Rise of Skywalker and all that. Because whoever it was,
possibly.
they basically were like canon junkies and expanded universe in particular, which of course I know wasn't 100% canon, but still. So it is interesting that Filoni, Favreau, Lawrence Kasdan's kid, which I think is Jason Kasdan, J.J. Abrams to a degree, a lot of these guys are really familiar with the expanded universe. Of course, Kathleen Kennedy
Plus,
is not, but
of course, we can't forget our good friend Pablo Hidalgo either.
well,
So,
the problem I have with him is that I don't know, he seems a little. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, obviously he's familiar with it because he's been more or less on board since even before. I mean, he was there actually before the whole Disney
yeah,
Lucasfilm thing, right?
yeah, he was
So,
there for Filoni, and
yeah.
see, that's what I'm saying. Like between him and Filoni, Filoni, and maybe, um, see if they brought Timothy Zahn into the whole fray,
Well,
into the
or Claudia
that would be
Gray.
cool.
I mean,
Or Claudia
honestly,
Gray,
those would
yeah.
be the two that I would say, hey, bring the because look, Timothy Zahn is actually responsible for a lot of what we I mean,
Hmm.
at least in the
He's
expanded
responsible for
universe.
Thrawn.
Well,
I
yeah,
mean,
but I mean, if you even go beyond Thrawn a little bit and you go into a lot of the expanded universe stuff, he's responsible from his novels alone. Everybody spawned like he is the father of the expanded universe without question. I mean, Mara Jade was his, Talent Card was his, you know, Kip Duran was his, the Asalamari was his, Captain Paleon. I mean, all these guys that they eventually started to make all these spin-off things, they basically used the what we call the Thrawn trilogy as somewhat of a template of the entire expanded universe. So the entire expanded universe is built on the shoulders of Timothy Zahn. And then to add even more, this guy, that's kind of like a Few Good Men thing, right? This guy ended up even weaseling his way into the main canon. Because remember, he wrote a bunch of Thrawn books and a couple other things that influence the main canon. Like he actually has what we would call canonical books currently because he wrote, like the Thrawn trilogy that he had, and then I think he did the Thrawn Ascendancy stuff too. I mean, anything that has Thrawn's name on it, this guy's all over it. Okay, so Ronaldo says, I mean, if he directed Logan, Indiana Jones, and he'll do Swamp Thing, I'm guessing he's a geek comic book fan, so maybe he'll use them. Well, here's the thing. You can't really draw the line in the sand too much about, okay, this guy's into the comics, into the expanded universe, so he's automatically going to use these Ricotta people, right? I mean, maybe. But I think a lot of it is going to be, do they fit in his story? Like, he might be a huge fan of them, right? But they might not necessarily fit into the overall narrative that he's trying to tell. So I think you have
or
to
maybe they
be,
come later.
or maybe they come later.
Look at because, like I said, this is the very beginning. This is like the book of Genesis, essentially.
Yeah.
They may not show up until like
Exodus, Leviticus,
it was probably more
Malachi.
like
I mean,
yeah,
but
Yeah, exactly, Malachi Habakkuk era or whatever.
yeah, right. Exactly. Maybe he's a minor prophet. I don't know. Uh,
Yeah,
He says, so he's still on these ricotta. Ronaldo, we know you love the ricotta. If there's nothing
I
else
think
that I
they
know about
appeared.
you, there's two things I know about you. You love The Last Jedi and you love the ricotta. So he says, I think the ricotta appear in Knights of the Old Republic for the first time and later in the comics. If
So
that's
yeah, so
true,
that's Knights of the Old Republic. So that's further down the lines. Like
a
I said, that's
way
what I mean.
further
Like
down
so,
the line, yes.
that's what I'm saying. Like if this is the beginning of it, they're probably now if they do the Knights of the Old Republic style of the movie. Like
Well, that's where I'm hoping they go,
Lord Miller,
actually.
Lord and Miller when they were not Lord and Miller, um,
No, you're thinking
Weiss,
of Weiss
Benioff
and
and Weiss.
Benioff and Weiss, yeah.
Yeah, when their film was supposed to be somewhere around there.
Yeah. They were going to go Knights of the Republic. Mangold said, I will see your old Republic and I will raise you an absolute beginning of the Jedi, which, I mean, honestly, if they want to lock that in, I don't necessarily have a problem with that. You know, I think, well, let me just get this last chat in here. He says, I think they're very freaky looking. Well, you know, that could be said for a lot of people in the Star Wars universe. But again, I don't necessarily have a problem if they want to lock in the origin of the Jedi and canonize a lot of these stories. Now, of course, you know, the logical conclusion, of course, is, well, which ones? Because you've actually had Dark Horse take a few stabs at this. You've
Yeah,
had the expanded universe, even had a couple of books. I don't know exactly how far they went. You had some comics beyond Dark Horse that took a little bit of a stab at this. So you have some people who have definitely, you know, had their turn up to bat as far as the origins of the Jedi and the Sith. And there is somewhat of a detailed version of this within the expanded universe that has been pretty much widely accepted, except it isn't canon under Disney. But then there's nothing really that's contradicted it yet, right? So that's kind of how Lucas used to operate with the expanded universe. He said, okay, you know, you guys have to understand that to me, none of this means anything. But because you all are fans and you like this stuff, here's how it works. If I don't contradict it, you can all say that it's canon and it's true. That's sort of how he worked the whole thing, right? But then as soon as he
hmm
did something that contradicted it, well, guess what? His version is true canon.
right.
'Cause that was a thing. I mean, that was a thing back then. I mean, I
Oh
remember they
yeah.
used to do like interviews with Lucas and stuff. Like, I mean, you know, they would be asking him about some technique or something, you know. Well, when you developed THX, you know exactly how you did it. No, by the way, is Talon Card canon? You know, like they would just pop this stuff in, right? Because they needed his blessing. It's like, if you canonize this, then that means that we can officially love it now. Whereas if
hmm
we don't, it's like, well, we don't really know what you're doing here. I mean, you saw what he did with the whole Boba Fett thing, where the guy was supposed to be
Yeah.
Jaster Real or whatever, and it's kind of like, nope, just kidding. There's a whole nother origin story. Now you got this Jango Fett dude, and yeah, it was a little crazy. But I don't know. I mean, so far I think that they're on the right track though. But what I mean, do you think that this is something that they should, well, let me ask you this. What do you think in Dawn of the Jedi? Let's start to
hmm
steer this like this. What are some things that you think that they should absolutely root in canon, and what are some things that you think that maybe they should, I don't know, back off on and maybe develop slowly? Let's put it like that.
I would really like to just man, because there's so much, to the Star Wars lore,
Yeah, I know.
you know,
It's kind of
because
endless, you
you
know.
kind of have to wonder, like, okay, just establishing your base. Like, okay, let's just say planet Earth. Let's just take planet Earth. Once again, maybe I'm putting a little too much sciences into the science fantasy part of it, but I'm just thinking about like, okay, let's just say we take Earth and all of a sudden, I feel a disturbance in the force and I don't know
Mm-hmm.
what the heck is going on. So
Okay.
then I'm trying to go talk to people and I'm like, okay, well, how do I explain this? Like, well, I can see things, I feel life around me, I can feel like it have these feelings or whatever, and I feel like I'm able to almost like reach through them and do things. And okay, now to establish a job, you got to find other people like you to establish a Jedi order. So it's like, how And yes, everyone has everyone has, I guess, the force, but everyone can't tap into it. So like just that whole part alone, we're gonna have to really delve into how that actually works. And I think one of our upcoming shows, we're actually gonna, because George
Yeah, the
Lucas
midi
brought up
chlorian thing.
something.
Did you read that? Did
Yeah,
you watch that?
I haven't watched it yet.
Watch
That's
it.
why I'm watching.
I'm
I'm
telling you,
watching it
dude,
after.
watch it. It will change your mind. When you hear Lucas's version of it, and yeah, maybe I don't know, maybe we'll do it Friday. Because it,
Yeah,
it
that's what I was
is
thinking. I was like,
yeah, it's well,
because
it's
I think
kind of
this
a
will be the perfect.
sequel.
I think it's a
It
yeah, the
is.
perfect sequel to this conversation. And that's
Yes.
why I'm kind of like, all right, you know,
I mean, it
because
kind of changed my mind, to be honest. I'm just saying.
well, yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Like the basis of it all is like, okay, how do we? Because that's what I'm saying. How do you define the force? It's like, all
Right.
right, are they? Because you know, when the first person start doing it, people think, okay, this man's crazy. He's having hallucinations or whatever the case may be. Well, then it's like, okay, when you start being able to do stuff like pick up cups and do things like that, now they probably think you some sort of sorcerer or some sort of wizard or whatever. Like, and that's why they used to call them. They used to call the Jedi like wizards and
Yeah.
whatnot. So those things I would love to see like canonically explained. Um, and then of course, like once again, the whole duality of the dark side. Like, okay, well, hey, I want to stop this person from killing, or he broke in my house. I could use the force and just kill him, or I could just disarm him so he'll leave. But
Yeah.
I'm angry because he hurt my mom. So now I feel this sense of rage and I feel this overwhelming power that now starting to get consumed by the dark side of all this. Well, dang, he was just fine 2 days ago. What happened? Why is he so evil now? So let's delve in. So those are the things that I think we're really going to see. I don't even know if we're going to even see lightsabers in this
Well,
because,
it depends on what they do, because if you look
yeah,
at a lot of the things that were written, at least in the, I don't know, even there was like a little bit of a gray area too between the expanded universe and what's current canon and everything. But the original thing was that the early Jedi actually just used like swords. They
yeah,
weren't lightsabers. Like they didn't discover the whole, and I guess we'd have to just say it's Kyber now. I mean, before they didn't really have that. That was just kind of a
hmm,
thing. I mean, the Kyber crystal used to be this thing that was wrapped around the Emperor's neck and then they decided, okay, well, this is what powers lightsaber. I mean, it expanded eventually, but yeah, I mean, the original Jedi basically used swords. So it would be interesting.
yeah.
I mean, I doubt that's going to happen. I'm sure that they're going to, with new canon, they're not going to do that. I mean, if you made a Star Wars movie and they were fighting with swords, people would walk out of the theater. I mean, I'm just
Or maybe
saying.
if you started off that way initially, that's
Well, I'm
fine.
just saying by
And then
the end of the
so
film, they better be wielding
yeah.
lightsabers. And like every color, it'd be like Skittles out there, man. They better be wielding like every color in
It,
the
it
universe
look
by the
like
end of the film.
the arena at
Yeah, and Geonosis, exactly, in Attack of the
Geonosis,
Clones.
yeah.
But here's the
Yeah.
thing, and here's the other thing that I think you have to look at when you look at this stuff, because, and you brought up somewhat of an important point, and it's really how much are they going to put in this film? Like,
Yeah.
how
How much are you
many
gonna
movies are
explain?
we going to get? I mean, is this Dawn of the Jedi thing going to be an all encompassing, okay, we're going to talk about the origin of the Jedi and maybe go through to where, I don't know, like the first Jedi Order or something is created? Or are they going to really just go in the beginnings, and if it makes any money, maybe they'll do more films down the line? I mean, it just really depends on
Hmm.
where they want to go with this, because again, you're right. I mean, if you have a situation where you're okay, I got these powers. I mean, I don't know, is there anybody else like me? And and then of course, if you introduce the dark side into it, see, that's what I'm saying. I mean, the fact that
It's
it's
layers.
talking,
There's so many layers to
yeah,
this.
there is, and it's like if you're gonna do that, I mean, the part of the problem, and this is one of the things that I thought even in Celebration 2023 when they first brought this up, is like, okay, we're gonna do this epic biblical movie, which of course I hope. Because one of the things about these biblical movies that they had, They were all like 3-4 hours long.
4 hours long. Yep.
So if you're gonna do it, man, you better do it like that, because I don't want to see like a 2.5 hour film here.
Unless you're telling me there's going to be a trilogy.
Well, you've right, but then again, they haven't really announced it as a trilogy, and here's the
Right.
problem. And it's kind of like you had alluded to earlier in the show, actually, where it's like, okay, you're taking something as vast as
Mhm.
Dawn of the Jedi. Here's the here's the beginning of this entire thing. I mean, can that really fit into a film, realistically speaking?
Yeah,
Maybe
because
if
you're
it's
still
4 hours, sure, but
because you're still going to leave me with a lot of questions.
well, that's it.
Oh,
Right.
and we still have questions from Rise of Skywalker. I don't know, 3
Right.
hours.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah. I mean, the last thing that the franchise needs to do is give us more questions. Ronaldo says, with the failure of Indiana Jones, I'm not sure this will happen. I think he's still on the ricotta
Mangold.
and all this stuff.
Oh well, I
Well,
think he's talking about
Mangold.
maybe
Well, I mean, look.
because yeah, he's the one directing it. So
Here's the thing. I guess it really depends on how honest we're trying to be. Now, again, there's more Kathleen Kennedy rumors, as there are at every year. But one of the things that does lend credence to it this time is that apparently she's not seeking a renewal to her contract. So maybe she's going to ride it out. Because honestly, the failure of Indiana Jones really could be chalked up. And keep in mind, I haven't seen it yet. But it could be chalked up to the fact that she once again interfered, tried to create certain female heroes in her own image, whatever that may be, and diminished because the main hero happened to be a guy. I mean, it's just one of those things where how many times does Disney have to keep repeating the same formula that fails and realize, hey, guess what? We don't want our heroes redefined. Okay, we don't want pseudo heroes coming in their place. What we want is a good movie that features the people that we grew up loving. All right, so there's that. Now, Ronaldo goes on to say, but if it does, I'm 100% confident this will be from good to great. Mangold is great at his work. I agree, but again, much like if we're going to use a sports analogy, you get all these dudes that are like super amazing Heisman Trophy winners. They come from these winning teams. As soon as they join the Detroit Lions, all of a sudden they like forget how to play football, right? So the lesson here is a bad organization will take a talented person and turn them horrible. All right.
Absolutely.
So James Mangold on his own might be an amazing guy, directed a lot of great films, whatever. You put him in this losing organization, it's a recipe for disaster. Now, whether or not that happens, maybe he rises above it. Look, we got Rogue One. Rogue One was a really good movie, in spite of everything. So, we'll have to see. So he says, this is $1 million question. Will they use midi-chlorians? Well, you're definitely going to want to watch our show on Friday, because George Lucas actually, in a book, it's a Star Wars encyclopedia, like 99 to 2000, whatever. It's something that was recently released, and I watched a video on it a couple of days ago. And once I got Lucas's full explanation of what midi-chlorians are and their role and how it plays into it, I'm kind of on board with midi-chlorians now. Now, again, I could still make an argument that even though Lucas explained them, it is still somewhat of a sci-fi thing in a science fantasy movie franchise. And you could make the argument overall that you don't have to explain it to that degree. One of the things about fantasy and even sci-fi fantasy is that you don't necessarily have to explain everything. It's better, like, if you go back to Obi-Wan's explanation of the Force in episode 4, it sufficed, right? That was enough. That's all we needed. But
even Yoda's furtherance of an empire.
Yeah, that's true. He did sort of expound on that, but he didn't really give a whole lot of detail on it. He just
Right.
filled in a few holes or whatever. But yes,
Yeah.
now that's where the debate is going to be on our show on Friday, because Lucas's explanation of why he put midi-chlorians in there is extremely sound. It's great. It makes perfect sense. On and on it goes. But the question that we're going to be posing to you guys, and it's up for discussion, is do you just go in that whole, let's just take broad strokes. We don't really need everything hyper explained. That's what sci-fi is. But more the fantasy genre, and this is sci-fi fantasy, but it's not fantasy sci-fi, it's sci-fi fantasy. And yes, there is a distinction in there. And look, this is something that if you guys want, click the link in the description. We can keep this going on Discord. Because this is one of those things that I can definitely see us going back and forth on here. But join our Discord server if you guys want to, keep this stuff going. But that's where I think it's going to land on Friday. It's going to be, do you stick with the more broad strokes of like what Obi-Wan said in episode 4 and Yoda said in episode 5 and just kind of leave it at this very generic, broad definition? Or do you want to start getting in the minutia of things and now you got midi-chlorians? So that's where that's going to be. He goes on to say, Ronaldo, I mean, it makes sense. It's the origins of the Force. Well, kind of. And again, you're going to want to watch Friday. It is and it isn't. But I do definitely think that, this is something that when you're talking about the Dawn of the Jedi, you really have to define. And I hope this is what they're doing. I hope they're really hard at work defining the beginning, middle, end of the story. Whether that means it goes over like 5 films, or are you going to do it in one movie that's like 4 hours long? But you have to define this because you can't just, you have to essentially define where you're going to go with this because this is such a broad subject. You know what I'm saying? It's just really broad.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm really curious, like I said, just on their approach on it and what subjects they want to absolutely cover. I think you definitely need to, of course, show like, okay, the first person kind of awakening with the Force or whatnot, and then we need to see the establishment possibly of a collective, may not be called the Jedi Order, or what are we going to call it?
Well,
Are
yeah,
they
I
going to
mean,
be
it's
on
got a...
Jeddah? I mean, we're like, and
Exactly. See, that's what
how
I'm
do they
talking about.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, then how are they going to form like the order? Like, okay, what are the rules that's going to govern this particular? Because it changed over time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, what are the rules initially that govern the Jedi Order? And then are we going to see the progression of, down the line of like, okay, by the high time we get to the High Republic, this is what the Jedi Order looks like now. And then by the time we get to the Phantom Menace, this is what the order looks like, so on and so forth. When did they start finding babies and start, capturing them at infants to basically imbue them with their doctrine? Like, when did that start?
Well, and that's where Lucas's little midi-chlorian thing, it's quite fascinating, actually, his explanation.
Okay.
It's, like I said, I don't usually send the videos to you, but this is one to watch. This is an important one to watch. In fact, I actually put it in our Discord as well, so it's there.
Yeah, I plan on watching it when I have dinner tonight.
But the thing is, I think that another thing that you have to do, which kind of goes into this, right? Because you have this beginning, this dawn of the Jedi. Then you had the Old Republic. Then you had the High Republic. And then, of course, you have the more common era, I guess. So, first of all, you have to define where are you going to begin and end with this. I mean, obviously, the beginning is where you're going to begin. But, I mean, are you really going to begin with the first guy that just kind of stumbles on the Force? Is it going to be kind of a new thing? I mean, where is it really going to begin? And then you have to go, where are you going to conclude this little era that you're creating? Is this film the beginning of multiple multiple films, books, comics, what have you, that fill in the gaps of this particular era. Where are they going to? Are they even the Jedi at this point? You know?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, are they called that? Or
Right.
is this just going to cover, their really cool force users or something? And then, yeah, where does it fit into the grand scheme of things? These are the things that you really have to start to cover when you're dealing with this, because again, I mean, it's such a broad topic and it's untouched. And that's the thing that makes it even harder. It's
Mm-hmm.
catnip to filmmakers and writers and things like that, because you have this like virgin era that isn't beholden to anything before or after it, right? So you have that, but the problem with it is, well, now you have to start defining it. You have to build out the parameters. You have
Mm-hmm.
to, and that's, I think, the part of the problem with the sequel trilogy was they went too heavily on nostalgia and they didn't spend enough time building out, here are the parameters where this era falls, and now we're going to start filling in the gaps for you, because they didn't even really have a plan. I mean, they said they kind of did, but it fell apart because Kathleen Kennedy came in. And I could buy that. I buy that. Because according to J.J. Abrams, they did have a plan. It just got blown apart.
Well, yeah, I mean, and you sent me that whole thing with Adam Driver,
Yeah, that
just
was,
about how, yeah. So I mean, yeah, it doesn't surprise me at all. It doesn't surprise me at all. So
well, and that's
I
eye
think,
opening, because we were sitting here bagging on everybody because it seemed like they didn't have a plan. Well, no, they did have a plan. It just got, blown up like the
well,
Death Star, basically.
well, that's what happens. It still holds true. They had a plan, and they went for a solution that didn't have one.
Well,
So
yeah.
they still didn't have a plan. So
Well,
I
yeah.
mean, and that's what we're really critiquing them about. So I think that, to wrap this up, I think that this is really going to be this could possibly be the thing, one of the major things that could save Star Wars, quite honestly.
Oh,
I
yeah.
personally believe that. If they do it right, if they
Right.
do it right, if they allow the story to really come through and not get so, and really understand the essence of what Star Wars is, as we've kind of detailed in some of our other shows. If they really get that, and then they really tell a compelling story with good characters, I think that between this, the Ahsoka series could really, um, save the franchise. And I think that's the best way, is to keep Kathleen Kennedy out of it as much as possible. But I'm really curious to see, like I said, the questions that we have. Where is the story starting? Like you said, Eric, where is it going to end? Um, what what marks are we planning to hit within this first film? If there's going to be multiple films, we need to figure that out. So there's a lot that's going to be coming about this, and I'm sure we're going to be talking about it as those things happen. But I'm really excited for it. This is something I've been wanting to see for a while. The Sith being so dangerous at this point is really going to be interesting, because to have that dark side power that's pretty much unbridled, because they don't even have rules at this point. You know what I mean?
No.
It's not just the
Well,
Jedi,
and
but
that's
they
it's a
don't even have
Sith.
rules.
I mean, it could just be Jedi that discover the dark side completely by accident, like you've said. I mean, they start out,
Well, yeah,
they have noble intentions, but then they just get, it's like a drug. It's like heroin. It's
yeah,
like
they get sucked in.
they
Yeah,
feel,
they get sucked into it.
yeah, and it just enhances their arrogance and their ego and fear and anger and all that stuff. And they get almost drunk with power. And it just, yeah, there's like a lot of things that they can explore with that. Ronaldo says, "Oh, they're not Jedi. They're called Jedi." Yeah, yeah. I know. I remember seeing that in the early comics and stuff like that. I don't know
Hmm.
if they're gonna. I mean, it's gonna be really interesting to see where they start and stop with this. And like you said, I mean, again, one of the things that we wanted to point out with this particular show was that they're talking about how it is gonna be the Jedi are discovering their power, and then they discover the dark side, and it's like, but they don't really know that it's the dark side yet. So it becomes dangerous because there's ignorance.
Mm-hmm.
Now, later, the danger becomes pretty much arrogance, right?
Yeah,
And that's
and
something that Jedi, yeah.
yeah, and you're willful. It's like you're consciously choosing to do something versus unknowingly doing stuff.
Yeah. And that's what makes this really dangerous is the fact that they don't understand the power they're playing with. And unfortunately, it's probably going to have
Mm-hmm.
dire consequences, which for the Jedi, that's bad news. For moviegoers, that's fantastic news because it means that we're probably going to get some really, really cool movie moments out of this whole thing, right?
Absolutely.
And so Ronaldo basically says, look, overall, I can't wait to see this. I just hope it actually happens. I think this is going to happen. I don't think this is
Yes.
going to be one of those, hey, we announced it and now, because here's another thing too, is another tidbit I ran into the other day. Apparently, Donald Glover and his brother are actively working on Lando. So even Lando, which was announced and then kind of went away, there's actually movement on it. So this thing was pumped up as, look, this is going to happen. I thoroughly believe this movie will happen. I believe the Rey movie will happen. And, if you guys missed that, it was a great discussion on maybe they bring the Yuuzhan Vong into the whole Rey thing. Just watch that. It was like the video I just did this past Friday. Yes, these two movies, I think, without question, will happen. Now, whether we're going to see the Rian Johnson movies ever, whether or not Kevin Feige's film is ever going to see the light of day, Taika Waititi's film, Patty Jenkins, like there's all these other movies that are sort of out there in the ether right now that technically are around, but don't seem to have the kind of movement or momentum that this Rey movie and then, of course, this Dawn of the Jedi movie has. So I think you could
Mm-hmm.
pretty much, as safe as a bet as you can put in Lucasfilm at this point. I think it's a pretty safe bet that you can count on these movies.
Absolutely.
Now, counting on the quality of these movies is a little bit of a different story, and of course, we will continue following this thing. All right, so before we take off, again, I would be remiss if I didn't actually promote our packages on buymeacoffee.com. So if you guys support us on buymeacoffee.com/head-to-head-SW, you could, of course, do one of two things. You can join these membership packages that you see, which I'll go into in a second, or, of course, you could just do a one-time donation. If you want to give $1 or $2 just to help us out, that'd be awesome. But if you guys want a little bit more, we're offering a little bit more. We got the Padawan level at $5 a month. We got the Jedi Knight level at $10 a month. And, of course, the Jedi Master level at $25 per month. And you can see you do get a couple of really cool things in that package. And, of course, we do totally appreciate the support. Again, we are trying to actually grow this channel. We've been somewhat sort of, doing it, obviously. But now we really want to just go full on with this. So hopefully you guys help us make that happen. But again, look, if nothing else, we just hope, one, you enjoy our content. Two, you hit the like button if you like this video, and hit the subscribe button. If you haven't yet, hit the subscribe button and you want to keep up with us. Of course, there's a notification bell, so anytime we go live, which generally is Monday and Friday at 8 o'clock on both YouTube and Twitch. We're on Twitch. So, again, I don't want to leave out the guys on Twitch, everybody on Twitch following us and watching us. We really appreciate it. And hopefully you guys keep chatting in, because that's the cool thing. You get the people on Twitch chatting in, people on YouTube chatting in, and, we're just all one big happy community here. And, of course, join our Discord server. Basically, the link will be in the description. You can click on that. We're going to, obviously, as the community grows, we'll have more stuff on there. Right now, we're new, so. But I'm on there almost nightly. I can tell you guys that right now. Most nights, I'm on there either trying to put some stuff in. If I see people on, I'll probably pop into the voice chat. So, hopefully Daryl joins us with that soon. It's just going to be a really cool community because when we're not on the air on Monday and Friday, it's like it's another place for us to hang out. And look, we don't just have to talk Star Wars. There's stuff on music there, sci-fi, all kinds of stuff. So hopefully you guys join us Friday because it looks like we've said it. We're going to talk about midi-chlorians. Are they really a bad thing? George Lucas actually weighed in and explained himself and gave us the full explanation of what midi-chlorians really are and why he put them in there. And you know what? It's not a bad explanation. Nobody's more surprised than me because nobody, not to trump out on everybody here, but nobody was more surprised than I was because I hated the concept of midi-chlorians, honestly. As soon as it was a thing, I'm like, okay, I hate this. Even in The Mandalorian, it's like his M count, and I'm all like, just like freaking out, like, oh, I know what that means. You might hide that behind initials, but I know what that M stands for, right?
Yes.
All right, so, I'm not going to blow a blood vessel while we're ending the show here, so. But watch us Friday, and we'll see. Now, I watched the video. I know, Daryl, you're going to watch it, you said, while you eat tonight. So I'm really curious on whether or not you kind of jump on board with it or not. Because, again, the discussion, I can even tell you guys what the discussion's going to be. This is how on point we are with this channel now. So the discussion's going to be, and check out our Discord. The video's in there. All right? So under, like, videos to watch or watch videos or, whatever I called it. I know I'm on there every night, but I don't remember everything. Okay? So, watch the video. It's basically a YouTube video. George Lucas on midi-chlorians. And what do you guys think? Do you think that, hey, this is an adequate explanation and Star Wars should actually go into this and maybe feature it a little bit more? Or do you think, hey, you know what? Obi-Wan's explanation for it in A New Hope and then Yoda's pretty much expounding on it in episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back, that's all we need. We don't really need the explanations, just nice broad strokes. Look, just give us an idea what this is. It's fantasy, it's not sci-fi. So we hope you guys can join us on Friday for that discussion. All right, so with that, I think we're going to wrap it up for tonight. It was good to have you back, too, by the way. I mean,
Glad to be back.
Yeah, well, it's kind of fun sometimes to just engage with everybody and all that stuff. But, like I pointed out Friday, I mean, this show's called Head to Head, not Head. So, I mean, if it was called Head, it might have a little different connotation and probably would have more viewers and subscribers. It might be on OnlyFans. It's like, yes, we're streaming on OnlyFans now. We'll talk about Star Wars and we'll remove clothing if you want. But all right, but with that, we'll see you guys on Friday. I'm Eric Vansel.
I'm Daryl Sanders.
May the Force be with you.
Always.
Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Be sure to follow us on Twitter @HeadToHeadSW. Submit your questions for our next show. Visit our official website at headtoheadswpodcast.com. Until next time, may the Force be with you, always.